The last one didn't do very, but we're going to show some stuff here that's the result of being warm early. And you hear that wind, that is a warm wind out of the south. This is an obscenely warm winter, spring, early spring. It's very, very warm. And with that said warmth, other things are happening. The buds are starting to come on the bushes and trees and things about a month early. We're walking down into the woods. I just jumped about 12 deer standing over here just before I went live. What I'm going to show you is if you look, these are buds on this tree. That's deer food. When the buds start coming out like that, the deer are starting to eat early. Now that's a great thing. It really is. We've had a lot of late winter, early spring rain here, storms, some pretty heavy ones, and I'm stepping down into the bottom right now to go to the main food plot in the bottom because it's quieter down there and the wind will die. But I want to touch base with you guys. Some of you may or may not know this, but it's good knowledge to have if you don't and pass on. You know, a buck's antlers, the weight of a fawn, and the recovery of a doe after having fawns in the spring, plus the recovery of the buck's body weight, is all determined by the quality of the food. Now look here. This little fella is all 18 ways of all greened up. It's about a month early. Now, here, about fell over a rock. Here's the problem with that. It's great. The deer are starting to look pretty good. However, a lot of your nutting, fruiting trees, when it gets like this, what they'll do is they'll go ahead and they'll have some fruit and blossoms and things, and they'll get frozen. If you get a real cold snap for 4 or 5 days, it'll kill them. And they'll just come back and have leaves and very poor crop. Well, those kind of things are needed in the fall and late summer for the deer to have a really, really good antler growth and weight coming on. So this is a blessing and a curse all at once. If it'll stay warm and do nothing more than frost between now and the first part of May, well then it's all going to be fine. But when you're sitting here and you're hoping that your apple trees and your acorns and your persimmons and things like that make, and they're already starting to get a few leaves and buds. Here's a small sample. This tree right here, it's just on the verge of blowing leaves, which means about a month from now, if it blows leaves at the first part of April, it stands a real bad chance of being in blossom here in the upper central Midwest, and then you'll lose your food. The other thing that's happening that's crazy is I just got to the edge of the food plot. My clover, my chicory, all that good stuff. Here's some. Look at all this fresh chicory coming up. All this is clover and chicory and stuff, and you can see the little bitty clovers and stuff that I frost seeded. That's wonderful if it doesn't hard freeze. So a lot of the seeds have taken off, and you can really see them right here compared to the chicory and stuff. That chicory that's coming up, a lot of it is last year's. It keeps coming back, and so does the clover. And here you can see all the baby clovers and the triticales and things. It's looking good. If it stays warm, your deer, and My deer throughout this part of the country that's had all this warmth in the last 30 days are going to have tremendous antler growth and have bigger than normal bodies because the food has come on so early here. Conversely, if it comes hard freeze in the next 30 to 45 days and stays hard freeze for 4 or 5 days, it's going to set everything back. And so let's talk about that for a second. So if it sets everything back, the first thing that's going to go on the bucks, I got to get this stick out of here. Boy, that's a nice trail. The first thing that's going to go on the bucks is going to be their antler growth. And then their body size. What they're going to do is they're going to get out and put as much body mass on as they can first. And that's going to take away from their antler growth. Last year, a lot of the country had really, really dry summer and spring. Then it turned around and deluged or flooded in the fall, or just literally there was no food for a lot of deer at Deer Heights because it was a drought in many areas. Now, it's funny, we were abnormally dry here. A couple times we bounced into the drought category, and it was real dry. We didn't have good rain and outside of April and May and a little bit of June. I mean, just a little. It was enough to save our crops. Yeah, the crops did well. However, when it doesn't rain, these food plots like you're looking at, all this green, it does something to it. It doesn't take up the nutrients out of the soil. Even though there's food down there, it doesn't take up the nutrients. So your deer aren't getting the nutrients they need to grow the kind of antlers you're going to want. So if you got a really, say last year you had perfect weather and perfect food and you saw a really big 10 or 12 or 8 pointer that might go 150, 60 inches, or maybe bigger. What's going to happen is if it stays dry or it kills this food, what'll happen is you could see that 150 inch antlers drop down to 130, 135 inches easily, very easily. So last year being abnormally dry, our nutrients weren't as good. The buck I killed was bigger last year, the year before, than the year I killed him this year. But he was also older buck. So all that being said, the point I'm making to you is if you have the ability to add on nutrients in a time when it's dry or it's unseasonably cold and it's killed your greens, my gosh, there's a lot of greens here. You can see those greens down through there real well. If you have the ability to supplement if it's extremely dry in a drought condition or your food plot gets burnt, do so. But don't break the law doing it, because a lot of places it's against the law. I mean, that's just the way it is. I can supplementally feed if I have to. Right now, I'm going to say that from all indications, my food plots are getting a real big jump this year. Now these clovers and chicories down here are getting big enough that a frost isn't going to kill them. A hard freeze might put them back, but here's the thing about them. They'll spring back. They just won't be as big as if they don't. But what'll come and get me again is if we have an extremely dry year. There are deer prints all over this. They're already in here. You can see it. They're already in here eating. And they're eating big. And those deer I saw up on the hill coming in, way up in here, those looked wonderful. So here's the deal. If your food doesn't look good, supplementally feed. If it's a drought, don't do anything and let Mother Nature handle it, or do something to help. You know, not everybody cares about antler size, and that's okay. But if your fawns are too small going into the fall, it's not going to be good for them. If you can get out and plant food plots, let's get her done. These food plots are coming up real strong. And remember, the size of your bodies on your deer, the size of your fawns, the recovery time of your does, and the size of your buck's antlers are all directly related to this, the food that's out here. I wish you all luck this spring. It's getting ready to be the time to get out in almost all of the deer range and get into these food plots like this. So if your antlers on your older bucks were smaller last year and you had a drought, that's why. If your doe body weight was smaller last year and you had a drought, that's why. Your food can't take up the nutrients. And if your food plots are looking like mine in the Midwest right now, in the upper Midwest, and they're coming up like crazy, keep your fingers crossed and pray that a frost, a killing frost, doesn't get your blossoms on your trees, your nut and your apple trees, and do yourself something else. Do not rely on these food plots all the time, because they gave up on my food plot last year, it's still green, to move on to carbohydrates, which was corn and beans. That's the only way they could get the weight on they needed, because they weren't getting up the nutrition here. Fertilizer will do you wonders. So look at the chicory and look at the clover. It's coming up like mad. Frost seeding works. The proof was right here a little bit ago when I showed you. These little bitty things right here are clover. That's clover. I wouldn't put out any kind of cereal grains, corn or beans, until you get your last frost. Don't try it. I've got about 1,000 pounds of corn, beans, oats, turnips, radish that I'm going to put out in these great big food plot areas. And inside the woods, we're going to walk over here. Inside the woods, I've got what's called a shot plot. Now, this is a whole season food plot. There's a great big one up here on the side of the hill that's about 10 acres. And that is a full year food plot. And that will get a lot of my corn, beans, winter peas, oats, triticale, cereal rye, not grass rye, not the rye grass. There's a difference in the two, believe it or not. This is right here. We're standing about right here is where I killed my buck last year, right here at this opening. He was coming down a scrape line out across here, and he'd been rubbing on that vine, and there's a tripod stand down the lane, and that's where I shot him from at 46 yards. He ran in there about 100 yards and fell over dead. He came right down that path. There's about 100 scrapes and rubs down that path. That buck was 4.5 years old, 9-pointer, and I think he was a dandy myself. Coming up on the shot plot now. And this lane, don't let your lanes go. Seed your lanes. I've got clover in my lanes. Seed your lanes where you walk in. He was going to stop and eat on the lane and go on and make more scrapes and rubs. That's a good little secret for you. Also, deer like the path of least resistance. Go out 3 or 4 times through the year and mow where you walk and where they walk. Mow as much of it as you can. Move as many sticks as you can. Now this is a shot plot. And there's deer prints. Oh, look at the size of this monster. This is a shot plot, and it's not going to get the immediate growth. And there's a stand that I've got on it, and up there's a box blind for rifle season. Now, this is at the base of a hill, and it runs the whole distance through here going down into the creek bottom. But this shot plot's only about 50 to 60 yard long shot plot. And then I pick up a little 25 yarder on the other side of the stream down there. But the deer come through here like mad. You can see where they walk through, and there's some big prints. And I can tell you that stand right there had a lot of bucks moving through it. So anyway, my first live stream. Tell me what I need to do, what you think. But get out and food plot where you hunt. It's important. But what's more important is what you put where you're hunting. This shot plot is going to get turnips, radish, oats, shot plot, oats, turnips, radish, cereal rye, triticale, and then a sprinkling of clovers and chicory. That's what it's going to get. But I'm going to focus on the cereal grains because this is the kind of place that they'll come to in the middle of the woods and stop first, especially if you've got high carbohydrates before the rut or right in the front of the rut. The does will come here, the bucks will come here. So that's my live stream. I hope it helped, and nutrition is the most important part of having great, big, fat, successful fawns, does, and bucks with big bodies and antlers. So good luck, and I hope you enjoyed it. And I see a bunch of you. There's Hootie and the Hunt Outdoors. That's my son Chris, and check out what he's got. He loves fishing out there, and I'll be back. And I'm working on putting together my kill from a couple years ago, a really nice wide 10-pointer. So take care. Hunt outdoors, man. That's what we do.